In a world of floating islands, a great conflict began, which people would later call the Apocalypse War. A mysterious enemy appeared without warning, descending from the skies as winged orbs of light. These beings were grotesque and inorganic, unlike anything the world had ever seen before. Yet they used the same magic as humanity, earning them the name, the Unknowns, filling the sky with their presence. And so, through the invasion of those called the Fallen Angels, a massive threat loomed over everyone. Humanity was pushed to the brink of extinction, overwhelmed by the powerful invaders. But one great archmage stepped forward to save the world from complete destruction. He unleashed a massive spell, a glowing magic circle forming beneath him as he hovered in the air. His magic was incredibly powerful, easily destroying one of the strange celestial creatures. The young man had developed a unique magic called Mobius phenomenon reversal. In using this special power, he was able to repel all the mysterious enemies single-handedly. And so, after a long and devastating battle, peace finally returned to the world. The archmage looks at the clear sky, declaring that everything has been taken care of. The scene then shifts to the magnificent Magic's Palace Magic Kingdom, a castle floating among the clouds. Inside the royal palace's grand hall, a coronation ceremony is about to begin. The crowd cheers for Lord Alice, thanking him for driving away the fallen angels as he walks down the aisle. The people continue to shout his name, hailing him as the great archmage and their hero. He calmly approaches the grand throne and takes his seat. With a confident look, he accepts the cheers of the crowd, who call him their savior. And so he thinks to himself that he has finally become the king who will rule the world as the first emperor. He thought he had finally achieved his goal, but a voice suddenly calls out to him as brother. The new emperor turns, a look of recognition on his face as he identifies the speaker as Sophia. The young man is introduced as Sophia, Alice's younger brother, who asks what his brother needs. Sophia then corrects himself, addressing the archmage not as brother but as the first emperor. And so he then asks if he could be the one to bestow the crown, which catches the new ruler by surprise. Alice contemplates the request, knowing that this duty usually falls to the archbishop. He remains silent for a moment, his eyes showing that he is deep in thought. And so his younger brother looks on with an eager and hopeful expression, waiting for a response. The archmage seems a bit taken aback, a bead of sweat forming on his face. The archbishop then steps in, stating that they would be honored if Sophia performed the ceremony. With a small smile, Alice agrees and tells him to proceed, much to Sophia's delight. The younger brother is overjoyed, thanking him and saying he is incredibly happy. Alice replies that he is happy too, as Sophia is his one and only brother in the world. The archbishop and the other priests look on with warm smiles, approving of the decision. And so, the moment has finally arrived for the hero to be officially crowned as the emperor. The crowd erupts in cheers once more, celebrating their savior and the ruler of Magic's palace. And Sophia holds the crown and announces he is ready, preparing to place it on his brother's head. And he gently places the crown, thanking his brother for everything he has done for him until now. But then, with a dark smile, he adds a chilling goodbye to his words. In an instant, the new emperor feels a sharp, sudden pain as blood splatters across his face. With a malicious grin, Sophia drives a dagger into his brother's chest, leaving the new emperor in utter shock. Alice stares in disbelief, unable to comprehend what is happening at his own coronation. His brother explains that his powerful abuse magic isn't always active, leaving him vulnerable. Sophia reveals he took advantage of this opening, assassinating him while his guard was down. Bleeding onto the floor, the archmage asks why, reminding Sophia that they are the only family they have. And his younger brother coldly pushes his head down, simply replying that he does not know the reason. The nearby priests look on with sinister smiles, revealing they were all part of the conspiracy. Sophia calls his brother a fool for ignoring the kingdom's politics to fight the fallen angels, saying his usefulness has ended. He declares that he will now become the first emperor and rule the kingdom in his place. With a look of pure hatred, he then tells the wounded hero to hurry up and die. And turning to the crowd, Sophia pretends his brother is just tired and asks someone to take him away. He instructs the priests to take the archmage to a room where no one will ever find him. And so with a cold look in his eyes, he orders them to leave his brother there quietly. And the archbishop agrees, telling the public that it must be exhaustion from the long war. As the hero is dragged away, the crowd cheers for the new emperor, completely unaware of the betrayal. The sun sets over the Magic's palace as the cheers for the supposed savior echo through the kingdom, and the scene shifts to a dark, cold dungeon where the hero has been left to his fate. He lies on the stone floor, gasping for breath with the dagger still in his chest as his crown rolls away. He knows he won't survive, as the knife was coated with a lethal poison and driven deep into his body. In his final moments, he thinks about how he fought for everyone and for the kingdom, only to be betrayed. He clenches his fist in despair, thinking this was supposed to be just the beginning of his dream. He wanted to be a king beloved by all, and single tear falls from his eye as he thinks of his younger brother Sophia. He screams in anguish, questioning why his most beloved and only brother would betray him like this. A memory of their childhood flashes before his eyes, showing them running happily together hand in hand. He also remembers the times they spent studying side by side, always supporting each other. Back in the present, his sorrow turns to rage as he vows he will never forget this betrayal. The poison intensifies and he coughs up blood, his life quickly slipping away. With his last bit of strength, he decides that if it has come to this, he has only one option left. He prepares to activate his forbidden secret art, Mobius phenomenon reversal, at its maximum output. His plan is to surpass physical phenomena, reverse his own causality, and reincarnate through the cycle of rebirth. He knows there is no guarantee it will succeed, but he lies on the floor and reaches for the magic circle. Betting everything on this one miraculous chance, he touches the circle, and a powerful purple light erupts from his hand, flows forward, transitioning from his world to the present day, October 2026. An eye slowly flutters open, and the first thing it sees is the reflection of a large, golden chandelier. He becomes conscious and wonders where he is, feeling disoriented. His vision clears, revealing the ceiling of a lavishly decorated room. The room is filled with unfamiliar items like a globe, books, and framed pictures. He realizes this is not the royal palace of magics, which means his reincarnation must have succeeded. However, his body feels sluggish, and he wonders if it is a side effect of the magic he used. As he tries to process the situation, his eyes land on a hand mirror resting on the pillow next to him. He picks up the mirror, feeling a sense of dread as he brings it closer to his face. But when he tries to speak, only baby-like sounds come out, adding to his confusion and panic. And so looking at his reflection, he sees the face of a very young child and is horrified to realize he has become a baby. He flails his tiny arms in desperation, unable to accept that he has been reincarnated as a helpless infant. And just then, he hears a noise and turns his head, noticing someone has just entered his room. A woman dressed as a maid, named Arunasari, enters and greets him, happy to see that he is awake. He tries to ask her about the world he is in, but his words come out as incoherent babbling. The maid misunderstands him, thinking he just wants to sleep more, and she picks him up to cuddle him. He struggles in her arms, trying desperately to tell her that she's wrong, but he can only make baby noises. She gently tries to soothe him, patting his back while he continues to try and communicate his real thoughts. The woman smiles sweetly, calling him a good child, completely oblivious to his internal turmoil. Despite his frustration, he finds himself relaxing in her warm embrace, feeling a strange sense of comfort. And his new body's limitations take over, and he feels an overwhelming sleepiness that he cannot fight. He finally gives in, closing his eyes as he drifts off to sleep in the maid's gentle arms. The babysitter smiles warmly, content that the child has finally calmed down and fallen asleep. But just as he's about to be put down, his eyes snap open again, resisting the drowsiness. And short while later, he finds himself back in his crib, looking out through the wooden bars. A nearby clock shows that a couple of hours have passed since he last woke up. 2 hours later, he sits up in his crib, looking drained and contemplative after his nap. He realizes that he can't resist sleepiness, which means his body now has all the physical limitations of an infant. He is also unable to communicate his intentions properly, which makes his situation even more frustrating. Realizing he needs to act, he reaches out with his small hand, determined to find a way to learn about this new world. He manages to unlock the latch on his crib, deciding he has to operate efficiently within his physical constraints. With the side of the crib now open, he makes a loud crash as he and all of his bedding fall to the floor, and the noise alerts the maid, who was just about to enter the room with a tray. She opens the door and finds the baby on the floor, surrounded by a mountain of books. She is completely shocked to see the mess, her eyes wide with disbelief. The books are scattered everywhere, some open to pages with text and illustrations. There are books on history, geography, and various other subjects piled up all around him. The young child sits in the middle of it all, reading one of the books with intense focus. He babbles something that sounds like, "data," pointing at the book as if trying to explain. The maid is stunned, asking how he managed to get out of the crib all by himself, and she quickly picks him up and checks him for injuries, her concern overriding her surprise for a moment. Relieved to find him unharmed, she breathes a sigh of relief, thankful he is safe, and she puts him in a high chair, telling him he gave her a fright and that babies can't be left alone for a second. The babysitter then prepares his meal, telling him to wait a moment while she gets it ready. With a determined look, the young boy thinks to himself that his mission was a success, and he managed to read books for young children, which gave him some basic knowledge about this new world. It seems he has been reincarnated 1,000 years into the future, a fact that he now has to accept. As he drinks from his bottle, he processes the information that is now October 2026 in the Gregorian calendar. He notes that beyond the magical development he knew, this new world has made remarkable scientific and technological progress. And so, it is an era where those who gained wisdom through learning shine brighter than the victors of the arena. However, he acknowledges that he still needs more documents to fully understand this world, as the books he read were for toddlers. He decides he needs to charm the maid to take him to a library, but his intense stare just makes her ask if someone is there. He then wonders about the parents of the household, as he has only seen female servants around so far. He holds up his empty bottle, trying to ask for another serving in his baby language. The maid is amazed that he has already finished the entire bottle, finding it completely empty. She pats his head, encouraging him to grow up big and strong, pleased by his healthy appetite. He thinks about the milk, noting that it was lukewarm and bland but not bad, even though he disliked milk in his past life. The sensation of the maid's hand on his head makes him wonder if his tastes have changed in his reincarnated body. He babbles again, still trying to communicate, but the maid just continues to pat his head affectionately. Just then, another woman, the head maid Shikura Shinobu, appears and asks if she is still taking care of the baby, and she reminds the younger maid that there is still kitchen work to be done, prompting a hurried response. The head maid coldly remarks on how slow she is, though she at least replies promptly. The younger maid apologizes profusely, saying she will hurry to the kitchen right away, and the head maid sighs and decides to take over, telling the other woman to go to the kitchen immediately. The young boy watches the exchange in silence, observing the dynamics between the two servants, and so the head maid then turns her attention to the child, her expression unreadable as she stands over him. She looks at him with a serious and slightly intimidating gaze, a stark contrast to the previous maid's warmth. As she approaches, she picks up a small cloth, ready to take over the task of caring for the baby. The young child watches the head maid with a curious expression, wondering what she is doing. He observes as the stern-looking woman moves around the room, tidying up the mess he made, and she begins picking up the books that are scattered all over the ornate carpet, and after collecting all the books from the floor, she neatly places them back onto the shelves. And so it is revealed that the bookshelf is actually a hidden door, which she closes with a serious look. Behind where the books were, she discovers a small, ornate box filled with sparkling jewelry. With a quick glance around to make sure no one is looking, she slyly slips the box into her apron pocket. The reincarnated archmage watches this action closely, a look of realization dawning on his face, and so thinks that she can steal something and blame the baby's mess. Confident the master would never suspect her, she then turns back to face the child, completely unaware that her theft has been witnessed. The young boy's expression changes, his eyes narrowing with a look that is far too intelligent for a baby. The head maid seems to notice his strange gaze, a flicker of annoyance appearing in her eyes. A menacing aura surrounds her as she questions his insolent look, thinking he needs strict discipline, and she then picks up a thermos, stating that she was just using it to warm his milk, and so with a cruel smile, she wonders what kind of crying sounds he will make when the hot liquid splashes on him. The maid then throws the steaming liquid directly at him, intending to cause him serious pain, but just before the water hits it freezes in mid-air, suspended harmlessly around the child. The liquid remains completely motionless as the young boy looks on calmly from within the watery shield. His eyes begin to glow with a powerful purple energy, his expression turning serious and angry. He activates his magic, a must phenomenon reversal, and the hot water reverses its course back toward the maid. The head maid watches in stunned silence, unable to comprehend how the water has stopped and is now heading back towards her. Before she can react, the scalding liquid splashes all over her, causing her to let out a piercing scream. She falls to the floor, writhing in agony and screaming about how hot it is, desperately begging for some water to cool the burns. In the commotion, the stolen pearl bracelet flies out from her apron pocket, exposing her theft. The piece of jewelry sails through the air and lands perfectly in the small hand of the young child. With a smug look, he holds up the bracelet, realizing his magical abilities are still intact even in this infant body. The next day, outside the large, modern-looking mansion, a new plan is put into motion. The babysitter suggests they go to a fun park nearby, thinking it would be an enjoyable outing for a child, and she pushes him along in a stroller, telling him all about the fountains and swings they will see there. The young boy, however, seems to have a completely different destination in mind. He lifts his small hand and points in a different direction, away from the path to the park, and she stops and looks where he is pointing, agreeing to go that way even though she seems a bit confused, and they change their course, heading towards the location the young child has chosen for their walk. The babysitter looks up at their destination with a puzzled expression, not understanding his choice. Instead of a park, he has led them to a grand and imposing building that turns out to be a library, and she stands before the massive structure, asking if this is really where you wanted to come, and he has already acquired several books, including an encyclopedia and a grimoire, stashing them in the stroller. As they leave, he thinks to himself that these books should help fill in the 5,000-year gap in his knowledge. He plans to read them in secret, whenever the babysitter is not around to see him. The babysitter glances down at the child, who is now pretending to be asleep in his stroller. She finds his behavior very strange, wondering about a baby who dislikes parks and only wants to read difficult books. After their unusual outing, they finally arrive back home, with the babysitter opening the large front door, and she pushes the stroller inside and announces that they have returned from their walk. And so a man and a woman are waiting in the living room, and the woman happily exclaims that they are back. So the babysitter formally greets them, addressing them as the master and mistress of the house. The woman rushes forward with excitement, reaching for the baby and joyfully shouting his name, Alice. The mistress turns to the babysitter, asking a question with a slightly puzzled expression. She then picks up the young child and apologizes for leaving him alone, holding him close. The boy processes the situation, realizing these two are his new parents and that he shares his old name, Alice. And so, the other maid, who has just returned, tells the couple to take their time as she goes to prepare dinner. While being held, he observes his new mother and thinks to himself that she is really cute. The father apologizes to his wife for his poor health, saying it is his fault for dragging out his condition, and she quickly dismisses his apology, telling him that his illness is the most critical thing right now. The young child overhears their conversation and becomes concerned, wondering about this illness, and so his father laments that even the cutting-edge medical facilities in America were unable to help him, and his wife tries to be optimistic, insisting they can't give up and must keep searching for a cure. But he explains that they are running out of options, as their savings are depleted and the mansion might be foreclosed. To help with their financial struggles, the mother suggests reducing their annual donations to the orphanage, and so her husband firmly rejects the idea, stating that supporting those children is his reason for living. He closes his eyes in sorrow, wondering why he must suffer from such an incurable disease. The reincarnated archmage listens to their conversation, silently taking in all the details of their situation, and he thinks about the mansion, finding it comfortable and deciding he would rather not lose it. He also notes that his new parents seem to be virtuous people, as shown by their dedication to the orphanage. With a newfound resolve, his past and present selves merge as he decides he will save this couple. He reaches out to his father, babbling as if he wants to be held, and his mother interprets his gesture. The man takes his son into his arms, but his words are grim as he says he might not be able to hold him for long. He decides to use his Mibuas phenomenon reversal magic to diagnose his new father's illness. He suppresses his magical output, applying the secondary effects of reversal for a physical scan of his father's body. He notes that human anatomy seems unchanged after 1,000 years and begins to check for abnormalities in the magical meridians. He quickly pinpoints the problem, identifying a blockage in one of the man's magical pathways. He reaches out and touches his father's chest, who asks what his son is trying to do. The young child focuses his energy, preparing to use his magic to clear the blockage he has found. He sends a small pulse of magic into his father's acupuncture point, causing the man to jolt in surprise. The man stumbles back, groaning in pain as his wife rushes to his side in a panic. He feels a strange sensation in his body, a bead of sweat forming on his brow as he tries to understand what's happening. He places a hand on his chest, noticing a strange feeling that is both unfamiliar and yet somehow positive. He realizes with a start that his condition is improving, a spark of hope igniting within him, and a smile spreads across his face as he confirms that his health is definitely getting better. He exclaims that he is feeling so much better, and his wife wonders if it could be a miracle. And the young archmage watches, satisfied that this man's life should be safe now that he has intervened. However, the use of his magic has taken a toll on his small body, and he feels an overwhelming sleepiness. He struggles to stay awake, but the exhaustion is too much for his infant form to handle. He quickly falls asleep in his father's arms, the magical exertion having completely drained him. A little while later, he wakes up with a jolt, feeling a bit disoriented from his sudden nap. He sees his mother sleeping peacefully in a nearby chair, the stress of the day having finally caught up with her. He realizes that when he uses magic, his infant body can't handle the strain, and overwhelming sleepiness attacks him. He understands that until his body grows and builds stamina, he needs to avoid recklessly using his magic. But despite this, he activates his Mobius magic, forming a small glowing circle in his hands. Using his power, he levitates a heavy book and his milk bottle from a table across the room. With surprising ease for his small size, he catches both items as they fly into his crib. He tells himself the reckless display was a one-time thing as he starts reading while drinking his milk. Night falls over the large mansion, with the full moon illuminating the quiet grounds. Tucked into bed, the young child feels content, knowing that his new parents and home are now secure. However, as he gazes at the ceiling, he starts to ponder the true meaning of his reincarnation in this era. He is certain there must be a reason for his rebirth at this time and becomes determined to discover it. Meanwhile, outside in the darkness, a mysterious figure silently steps onto the mansion's property. A group of cloaked figures meets the disgraced head maid, who confirms that the mansion holds valuables. Two of the intruders observe the home, noting its fancy appearance and that its master is sick. Another one adds that the owner is so kind that the security around the house is extremely lax, and so the bandaged maid impatiently demands her payment for showing them the way to the mansion. The leader of the group tosses a bag of money to her, settling their deal before they proceed, and so with a sinister grin, he gives the order to break in and to kill anyone inside who might see them. He then adds a chilling instruction not to show mercy to anyone, not even to the infant, and his followers agree, and the group of intruders prepares to storm the mansion under the moonlight. Inside, the young archmage is sleeping peacefully, completely unaware of the danger approaching, but suddenly he sits up in his bed, his eyes snapping open as he senses a powerful and malevolent presence. and his eyes narrow as he quickly realizes the presence he sensed belongs to a group of intruders. He lets out a quiet sigh, a look of annoyance and resignation on his face, and so with a determined expression, he decides that he will have to drive them out of the house himself. And despite his serious inner resolve, he had earlier maintained the facade of a happy, innocent baby in front of his parents. Outside, the mansion is bathed in the pale light of the full moon, its peaceful exterior hiding the danger within. The intruders have already breached the perimeter and are now inside the mansion's foyer. They move silently through the grand entrance hall, their shadows dancing on the walls. The leader of the group stops in front of a plain wall, preparing to use his magic. A bright blue magic circle suddenly materializes on the wall, creating a portal for them to pass through. He and his cloaked subordinates step out of the magical gateway, having bypassed all the conventional locks, and the leader comments that there is no magical interference barrier, calling the master of the house gullible. Using the layout he obtained from the disgraced maid, he confidently leads his group toward the master's study. He orders his men to steal anything of value they find, but one of them asks what to do if they are discovered by the staff. The leader's cold and silent glare is enough of an answer, telling his subordinate not to make him say it twice. With a cruel sneer, he then gives the explicit order to kill anyone they find inside the house. Upstairs, the master and mistress of the house are sleeping soundly, completely unaware of the home invasion. They lie peacefully side by side, their rest about to be shattered by the intruders. The cloaked figures move with deadly speed and silence through the mansion's opulent corridors. But their leader suddenly comes to a halt, a sharp look in his eyes as if sensing something is wrong. They arrive at a large set of double doors, their sinister shadows cast upon it as they believe they have reached the study. The leader of the intruders kicks open the door to what he believes is the study, ready to plunder, and so he orders his men to search thoroughly for a magic stone box that he is certain must be hidden somewhere in the room, and his subordinates immediately get to work, searching every nook and cranny of the lavishly decorated study. One of them checks behind a large painting, hoping to find a hidden safe or compartment, and so another one looks under the furniture, but their search comes up empty, much to their leader's frustration. The leader grumbles that it's strange he can't find the valuables anywhere in the room, and so suddenly, one of his men calls out to him, pointing towards a different part of the mansion. Lying on the floor in the hallway is a large, glowing purple magic stone, sparkling brightly. Two of the intruders find the high purity magic stones, but their leader is puzzled why they are in the hallway. One of the cloaked figures looks towards a nearby room, a hint of suspicion in his eyes. Peeking through a slightly ajar door, he sees another, even more valuable-looking magic gem. The glowing crystal sits on a small table, its facets catching the light and creating a dazzling display. And he calls out to his boss in excitement, telling him that these are magic gems, which are worth 100 times more than magic stones. The leader realizes that the real treasures were being stored in this other room all along. He enters the room and finds the young archmage sleeping in his crib, but his attention is on the valuable gems. One of the intruders reaches for the magic gem, deciding to take care of it first before dealing with the baby. But just as he is about to touch it, the young child's eyes snap open, revealing he was only pretending to be asleep. The leader of the group is startled by the sudden movement, his eyes widening in surprise. The reincarnated archmage lets out a loud, piercing cry, a tactic to alert the entire household to the intruders. One of the men suggests silencing the infant, but the leader, enraged, yells for them to kill it instead. One of the intruders raises his dagger, telling the infant not to take it personally as he moves in for the kill. But before the blade can connect, the young archmage activates his NBUS phenomenon reversal magic. The intruder is suddenly thrown back, his hand glowing as if it has been burned by a powerful force. The dagger is deflected and sent flying, spinning through the air as the man is repelled by the magic. He screams in pain as he is thrown against the wall, his fellow intruders looking on in shock and confusion. So, the leader of the group is also caught off guard as a teddy bear, seemingly thrown from the crib, hits him in the head. He and his subordinate are sent flying by an unseen force, crashing hard onto the floor, and they are then lifted into the air, completely helpless against the powerful magic that has taken hold of them. The leader groans in pain, his body contorting as the strange force presses down on him. His eyes bulge as he realizes he is completely at the mercy of this unknown power, calling his attackers petty thieves. A mysterious voice reveals it is the court mage stationed at the mansion, and has reversed their gravity. The voice continues, warning that its magic is far more powerful and can kill them all instantly if it goes all out. The leader of the intruders grits his teeth in frustration, not expecting to encounter a bodyguard. The mysterious voice then demands to know who sent them, offering to spare their lives if they answer. The leader, under immense pressure, claims that there is no mastermind and that they acted on their own. The court mage concludes they are just common thieves and orders them to drop what they stole and leave. The leader reluctantly agrees, begging for the unsettling gravity magic to be released, and spell is suddenly dispelled, and the intruders are sent crashing back down to the floor. They land in a painful heap, groaning in agony from the rough landing. The leader glares with hatred and frustration, a bead of sweat on his brow as he realizes he has been completely outmatched. Not willing to accept defeat, the leader of the intruders gathers his energy for a final attack. He unleashes a powerful blast of magic, accusing the mysterious court mage of lying. The beam of energy rushes towards the baby's crib, but the leader's attack is met with an equally powerful defense. After a bright flash of light and a cloud of smoke, he finds that his magic has been completely nullified. In place of the baby, a strange scarecrow-like figure now stands, leaving the intruders completely baffled. The young archmage watches from his bed, calling their pointless resistance foolish as he holds up a strange device. The intruder looks down in terror as he realizes he has been trapped in a magical illusion, and the real threat is still there. He turns just in time to see the young child standing in his crib, a look of cold fury in his eyes. A glowing pink magic circle appears around the baby, and the image of his past self as a powerful archmage materializes behind him. A massive wave of magical energy erupts from the child, engulfing the entire room and the terrified intruders. The cloaked figures are caught in the blast, their bodies racked with pain as they are overwhelmed by the immense power. The next morning, police cars are parked outside the mansion, the aftermath of the night's events now being investigated. And so, the master of the house explains to the police that he found the intruders restrained when he woke up. And so, a police officer questions him and the new maid, learning that they don't know who subdued the criminals. The officer reveals that the disgraced maid who tipped off the thieves has confessed, claiming she was threatened, and so he adds that the criminals themselves seem to have confused memories, and apparently a baby killed them or something. The master and the maid are left completely speechless by the bizarre and unbelievable story. Nearby, the young archmage crawls on the floor, babbling innocently to maintain his cover, so his mother watches him with delight, praising him for his impressive crawling skills. As his parents dote on him, he is careful to hide his true power, a small knowing smile on his face. With the immediate danger gone, the father breathes a sigh of relief, feeling that it's finally all over. The mother notices her son's happy mood and asks if something good happened, to which the father agrees. The young child then pushes himself up from a crawling position, ready to attempt something new. With a look of intense concentration, he slowly and unsteadily rises to his feet for the first time. He manages to stand on his own, a major milestone for a child his age, much to his parents' surprise. And his mother exclaims in shock that he is walking, and his father encourages him to keep going. The father is amazed, thinking his child might be a genius for walking so soon after being born. The young archmage maintains his happy baby fad, enjoying his parents' doting praise, and his father picks him up, overjoyed, amazed by his son's incredible progress. The mother, however, thinks her husband is exaggerating, though she is clearly happy and proud. The young child is content, thinking that physical independence through walking is a good start for now. He understands that he will need to train not just his intellect, but also his physical body. However, he is also aware that becoming too much of a child prodigy could be problematic. He decides he needs to grow quietly and inconspicuously, continuing his studies in secret while maintaining his cover. And so the new maid brings him a bottle of fresh milk while he sits among a pile of books, already engrossed in his reading. She watches him with a look of awe and disbelief, a bead of sweat on her brow. She is convinced that this child is a true genius, having witnessed his incredible abilities firsthand. She rushes to tell the master and mistress what she has seen, her voice filled with excitement and shock. The maid explains that their son insisted on having the books, and he has been reading them all morning. The father looks at his son in stunned silence, a look of pure astonishment on his face as he wonders if his child is gifted. The reincarnated archmage listens to his parents' excited plans, a thoughtful expression on his face. The father is thrilled, deciding they must enroll their son in the Ministry of Magic and Science's educational institution. As his parents discuss his future, the young child remains silent, continuing his own studies among the pile of books. He is engrossed in a thick history book, his small hand tracing the ancient text as he absorbs the information. The book reveals that 5,000 years ago, the world was home to a super-ancient civilization, the Magic Kingdom, Magic's palace. This heroic nation repelled the mysterious fallen angels and brought peace to the world. But the history books now claim that the ruler of this nation was the first emperor, Sophia. The text describes Sophia as the great archmage who commanded the apocalyptic war and whose descendants prospered. It states that even 5,000 years later, the bloodline of that kingdom continues to rule the world. The modern world's peace is attributed to the reign of the first emperor, and even superpowers fall under his influence. The current world emperor is Sophia the 100th, who rules from the Magic Kingdom, guarded by a magical warrior elite. and the young archmage processes this new information, realizing they have completely erased his existence from history, and he places his hand on the book, acknowledging that history is often distorted by the victors for their own convenience. A look of pure fury appears on his face as he thinks of his brother, Sophia, and the extent of his betrayal, and with a sinister smile, he decides that he will not let this false history stand. He vows to expose the truth and bring the real history to light, seeking his revenge after 5,000 years. He will use his unique magic, Albios phenomenon reversal, to achieve his goal and reclaim his rightful place. Suddenly, his intense emotions cause his magic to surge, and the maid calls out his name in alarm, and he and all the books around him begin to float, a poltergeist phenomenon caused by his overflowing power. He curses inwardly as he realizes he has unconsciously reversed gravity, losing control for a moment. The maid is completely terrified, her face pale with shock as she tries to comprehend what just happened, and she runs from the room screaming for the master, begging for forgiveness for her incompetence. Later that night, the mansion is quiet again with the full moon shining brightly in the sky. The young archmage is practicing his walking, his parents encouraging him with every step he takes. So he takes a few wobbly steps and then tries to say mama, which comes out as my, much to his mother's shock. He then tries to say papa, and his father is equally stunned to hear his son's first words. Both parents are in disbelief, amazed that their son has called them by their names so soon. The father is convinced his son is gifted, having learned to speak at such a young age, and so, the maid then enters the room to announce that the preparations for the evening are ready, and the mother is surprised to hear it is already that late, the time having flown by while playing with her son, and she turns to her son, a sweet smile on her face as she calls out his name. She then tells him it is time for them to take a bath together, her voice filled with warmth and affection. The young archmage is caught off guard by the suggestion, a look of confusion on his face, and his mother happily repeats that it is bath time, completely oblivious to his internal turmoil. He tries to refuse, thinking he can use his purification magic to clean himself without a bath, but his mother insists, telling him he has been playing and sweating, so a bath is mandatory. He panics at the thought, realizing that even in a reincarnated body, a bath with the lady of the house is unavoidable. In a desperate attempt to escape, he runs to his father, calling out to him for help. The father happily agrees to bathe with his son, pleased that the child seems to like him so much. And so, the young archmage's first day of navigating his new life comes to a close, filled with unexpected challenges. And tucked safely in bed, the young archmage is relieved to have made it through the eventful day. He thinks about his goal, which is now crystal clear, remembering the current emperor is descended from his treacherous brother. He clenches his small fist, vowing to confront them with the truth of history and reclaim his legacy. But he knows he must be patient and wait until his infant body grows strong enough for the task ahead. 3 years later, a magnificent castle-like building surrounded by cherry blossoms comes into view, and the young boy's parents tell him this is the kindergarten he will be attending, and he vows to do his best. Now 3 years old, Asukai Arisu stands proudly in his new uniform ready for his first day of school, and so he turns to his parents with a bright smile, thanking them for enrolling him in such a prestigious kindergarten. As he walks with his parents, he hopes to get along with his new teachers and friends, but he also worries about being bullied. With a mischievous glint in his eye, he wonders if perhaps he will be the one causing all the trouble instead. He overhears other parents bragging about their children's accomplishments, like scoring perfect marks on aptitude exams, and so another mother boasts that her husband is the director of the Magical Research Institute. A third parent chimes in, mentioning that they have met at the Magic Cooperative Association gatherings. The young archmage observes them, realizing that these are the children of the elite candidates of this new world. The entrance ceremony for the private luminous kindergarten begins in a grand hall. The headmistress welcomes the new students, telling them they will study sports and magical arts under a cutting-edge curriculum. The young boy listens intently, thinking this is his first experience in an organized society, and he will handle it his way. The scene then shifts to the Star Class classroom at Luminous Kindergarten, filled with energetic children. A cheerful woman with her hair in buns introduces herself as Miss Sally, the Star Class teacher. The children all greet her enthusiastically, but the young archmage stands apart from the group, observing quietly. The young archmage maintains a stoic expression, his face unreadable as he observes the classroom dynamics. He is pulled into a dance by 2 of his classmates, but his bored and uninterested expression remains. During art class, another student looks at his impressive drawing with a mix of awe and confusion. He sits through story time with the same indifferent look, not at all engaged by the teacher's enthusiastic reading. His teacher notices his lack of participation and asks if something is wrong, but he simply replies that he is fine. She finds his behavior strange, having never seen such an unfriendly child, and tries to entice him with some toys. The teacher becomes increasingly worried about his withdrawn behavior, but he remains engrossed in his book. During recess, the other children gather in groups, their whispers and curious glances directed at one particular student. They wonder about a child from the Moon class, a different and seemingly more elite group. A confident young boy with a bowl cut introduces himself as Zazen Takami from the Moon class, declaring he is the most important person there. He proudly proclaims himself the #1 aristocrat, and his two companions shower him with praise. The reincarnated archmage watches this display from a distance, a look of mild annoyance on his face. He turns back to his book, dismissing the scene as pathetic and not worthy of his attention, and the school building gleams in the sunlight, its impressive architecture a symbol of the elite world he now inhabits. He walks down the grand hallway, his small figure a stark contrast to the imposing surroundings. Suddenly, a voice calls out to him, and he turns to see who is trying to get his attention, and he sees Zazen and his friends cornering another student outside, telling him a poor person shouldn't be there. The young boy, clearly intimidated, backs against the wall and apologizes, his body trembling with fear. From a window, the young archmage observes the scene, surprised to see a star-class student apologizing, and Zazen's friend arrogantly declares that only first-class nobility can enter this kindergarten, reinforcing the strict social hierarchy. He continues to taunt the young boy, calling him a freeloader from a lower-class family that can't afford proper donations. The bullied child looks down, a bead of sweat on his face as he endures the verbal abuse. The boy with glasses then suggests that since he is not paying his share, he should do the cleaning instead. With a cruel laugh, the three bullies throw buckets of cold, muddy water all over the helpless child. The young boy is completely drenched, his uniform now soaked and stained with mud, and Zazen mocks him, saying the muddy water suits him as he prepares to throw another bucket. But before he can, a hand reaches out and stops him, a silent intervention from an unexpected source. And so the young archmage steps forward, standing in front of the bullied child and asking if they are going too far. And Zazen is annoyed by the interference, turning to the newcomer and asking what his problem is. The reincarnated archmage calmly tells him that the other boy didn't do anything wrong and that he should stop. Zazen's friend recognizes him as the new kid from the star class, a fact that seems to annoy them. So he looks the young archmage up and down, thinking he also looks poor and that something about him is irritating. Zazen lets out a dismissive huff, clearly not intimidated by the intervention. But just as he is about to retaliate, one of his friends spots their teacher, Miss Sally, approaching. The bullies quickly try to hide their buckets, but it is too late as their teacher has already seen them. Enraged, Zazen turns on the young archmage, calling him an idiot for getting them in trouble. He decides to punish him as well, raising the bucket of muddy water to throw it at him. But the young archmage is prepared, his hand already glowing with a faint magical energy. He activates his Menbius phenomenon reversal magic just as Zazen throws the water. The muddy water freezes in midair and then forms into a large wave, turning back towards the stunned bully. Zazen is left standing in stunned silence, his bucket still in hand as he tries to process what just happened. The wave of muddy water crashes into him, and his friends can only watch in shock as their leader is completely drenched. Zazen stands in a puddle of mud, crying out that it's so dirty as his friends call out his name in concern. The young archmage then takes the bullied child's hand, a firm and reassuring grip that surprises the other boy. And so, with a confident smile, he tells the other boy it's time for them to go, ready to leave the scene behind. The bullied child is confused but allows himself to be led away, still processing the sudden turn of events. And so, the two of them walk away from the stunned bullies, who are left to deal with the muddy aftermath of their failed attack. They find a quiet spot away from the others, the grand school building looming in the background. The young archmage asks if he is okay, and the other boy thanks him, confirming his name is Alice. The boy introduces himself, and they exchange a polite greeting, a new friendship forming between them. The young archmage then tells him that donations and social status don't matter, a statement that confuses the other boy. He advises him to resist properly if something bothers him, saying that waiting for someone else's help is foolish. He warns that otherwise, he will always be on the receiving end of mistreatment, and the other boy listens in stunned silence. The reincarnated archmage then walks away, leaving the other child to ponder his powerful words. The bullied boy watches him go, his expression a mix of awe and contemplation as he takes the advice to heart. The next day the school stands tall and proud against the clear blue sky, a new day of learning about to begin. Miss Sally greets her class with her usual cheerful energy, encouraging them to play and have fun. And the young archmage, however, looks bored and tired, not at all interested in the day's activities. During drawing time, he sits next to his new friend but his mind seems to be elsewhere. His teacher is baffled by his drawing, which is not a simple picture but a complex array of magical circles and formulas. The teacher is completely stunned, her mind struggling to process the advanced concepts he has drawn. She recognizes it as high school level magical theory, far beyond what any kindergartner should know. Overwhelmed, she can only stammer, a bead of sweat on her face as she tries to comprehend his genius. Later, during block play, the young archmage seems to be participating normally, though his expression is still bored. but he has actually used his magic to sculpt the blocks into a perfect replica of a famous statue, leaving his teacher speechless, and she panics, thinking she needs to report this incredible and unbelievable talent to the director immediately. The reincarnated archmage sighs, realizing that if he keeps coming to this school, his true abilities will inevitably be exposed. Meanwhile, Zazen and his friends are hiding around a corner, plotting their revenge, and Zazen is furious, vowing to get revenge on the poor kid who humiliated him in front of the teacher. He declares he will show him who is superior in this kindergarten, holding up a strange, cylindrical magic tool. Later, the young archmage and his new friend are walking down the hallway together, unaware of the trap ahead, and Zazen peeks from behind a corner, a sinister smile on his face as he waits for them to approach. The reincarnated archmage hears the whispers and senses the trap, but he decides to play along for now. Zazen explains his plan, having set up a magic tool in the hallway to blow the other boy away. His friend is amazed, noting that it is a tool used by adults, and Zazen proudly admits he snuck it from his father's company. He declares this is payback for the muddy water incident, and he will blow him away with an explosion. The young archmage finds the trap so obvious that pretending not to notice it is exhausting. As they get closer, Zazen's friends give him the signal, and he prepares to activate the magic tool. He pulls the pin, a maniacal grin on his face as he imagines his rival screaming in pain. But just as he activates it, a massive explosion occurs not in the hallway, but right in front of the bullies. The young boy cries out in fear, reaching for help as he braces for the impact of the explosion. But the young archmage activates his Mobius phenomenon reversal magic, creating a protective barrier around them. The explosion is redirected, and a powerful shockwave erupts from where the bullies were standing, and Zazen and his friends are thrown back by the blast, their faces a mixture of shock and confusion. They are sent flying through the air, their plan having backfired in a spectacular and painful way. The three bullies land in a heap on the ground, groaning in pain from the unexpected explosion. The reincarnated archmage stands calmly amidst the chaos, having effortlessly protected himself and his friend. The loud explosion attracts the attention of Miss Sally and another teacher, who rush to see what happened. They find the three bullies sitting on the ground, dazed and confused with stars circling their heads. And so, the young archmage points at them and explains that a sudden gust of wind occurred and the children got caught up in it. And he adds that with the recent unstable weather, they were also surprised by the sudden occurrence. And he then turns to his friend, and the two of them quietly slip away from the scene. They walk away, leaving the teachers to deal with the dazed and confused bullies. The teachers look at each other, still trying to process the bizarre explanation for the loud explosion. Later, the two boys are seen sitting on a bench in a quiet part of the school grounds. The young boy asks his new friend how he can become strong like him, a look of admiration in his eyes, and he confesses that he doesn't have any confidence in himself and is always getting bullied, and he admits that he can't even tell his parents about it, his voice filled with sadness and frustration. The young archmage tells him that people have infinite potential and that he should resist what he doesn't like. And so, he adds that as long as he doesn't throw away his potential, he will definitely be able to change, leaving his new friend in deep thought. The young archmage thinks to himself that he has done the same, placing his trust in someone's potential. A memory of his past life flashes before his eyes, showing him with his brother, Sophia, whom he once believed in. And the other boy is still contemplating the idea of potential, a thoughtful look on his face. But then, a bright smile spreads across his face as he declares that he understands and will try his best. The reincarnated archmage watches his new friend with a small, knowing smile, pleased by his newfound resolve. He reflects that even in a place with only small children, society's structure of takers and the taken from is already formed. So the next day, the school's playground is filled with children running and playing under the warm sun. The children are all dressed in their gym clothes, enjoying a day of outdoor activities and games. Miss Sally watches them with a proud and happy expression, but her smile soon fades as she notices something is wrong, and she turns her head, her eyes scanning the playground for a particular student who is not with the others, and she finds a young girl kneeling by the fence, her head down and her body trembling. The teacher rushes over to her, a look of concern on her face as she asks what is happening, and so, the girl clutches her chest, saying she doesn't know what's wrong but her chest is pounding and she can't breathe. The young archmage, who is reading a book nearby, looks up, his attention drawn by the commotion. The girl collapses to the ground, and Miss Sally panics, shouting for someone to call an ambulance. The young boy closes his book, his expression turning serious as he assesses the situation. He decides to use a customized version of his Mobius phenomenon reversal magic to perform a physical scan. Applying the reversal effect, he visualizes the girl's magical meridian circulation to find the problem. He discovers that part of her magical meridians is becoming blocked, causing her distress. He understands that such defects occasionally occur in people who are naturally abundant with magical power. He uses his magic to gently press on the girl's acupuncture point, clearing the blockage in her meridians. He is satisfied that the flow of her magical energy is now secure, though he knows it is just first aid. He calls out to Miss Sally, who is on the phone, and she turns, surprised to see him standing there. The girl sits up completely recovered, and the teacher is amazed, asking if she is okay. He explains that the intense exercise caused poor magical flow and that he knows from experience. And so with a confident smile, he tells the teacher he will leave the rest to her and walks away. And so later, in the director's office, the teachers are reporting the strange incidents that have been happening. Miss Sally explains that the sick child recovered quickly thanks to the young boy's advice. And so another teacher adds that the broken playground equipment was mysteriously repaired overnight after he mentioned it. A third teacher chimes in, saying that a magical projector he touched also fixed itself somehow. The director listens intently, her hands clasped as she processes the incredible stories about this one student. She repeats his name, a thoughtful and intrigued smile on her face as she calls him an interesting child. On the way home, his parents praise him for doing well at school, and he tells them drawing was fun. He then turns to his parents, a serious expression on his face as he tells them he has a favor to ask. He looks his mother in the eye and asks if he can quit the prestigious kindergarten. His parents are completely shocked by his request. Their face is a mixture of confusion and disbelief. Later that day, the family sits around a table, a tense and serious atmosphere filling the room, and his mother asks if he is serious about quitting such a prestigious school, her voice filled with concern. They ask if he was bullied or if the teachers didn't suit him, trying to understand his sudden decision. He calmly explains that he is not being bullied and the teachers are nice, but there is nothing more for him to learn there. And so his parents are in disbelief, unable to accept that there is nothing more for their genius son to learn at the prestigious kindergarten. He then tells them he has a request, his hands clasped on the table as he prepares to make his case. The family sits in tense silence, his parents waiting to hear what their extraordinary son wants from them. But just as he is about to speak, the maid enters the room to announce that the principal is on the phone. The mother is surprised to hear from the principal, and she gets up to take the call, a worried look on her face. She confirms her identity and listens to the principal, her expression growing more and more concerned. The young archmage overhears the conversation and starts to worry, wondering if the magic bomb incident has been exposed. Then the next day the family is called to the principal's office at Luminous Kindergarten. They sit before the principal, and the mother asks what she wanted to discuss, hoping her child hasn't caused any trouble. The principal smiles, a calm and knowing expression on her face as she prepares to speak. She assures them that their son has not caused any trouble, but rather they are amazed at his exceptional talent. The parents are confused, asking what she means by exceptionally talented as they look at their son. The principal then reveals that their son fixed a magical projector that even the adults couldn't figure out. The young archmage's eyes widen, a jolt of surprise running through him as he is directly confronted. The principal continues, mentioning that he also stopped a magic bomb to help his friend, not letting him forget his heroic act. He realizes with a sigh that his secret has been exposed after all, his cover blown by his own actions. The principal explains that stopping a magic bomb requires a magical aptitude of B rank or higher, far beyond a kindergartner. She adds that his magical skills, healing techniques, and engineering knowledge are all exceptionally outstanding. The father is given a report detailing his son's incredible abilities, his hands trembling as he reads it, and he is completely stunned, having known his son was a genius but not to this incredible and unbelievable extent. The young archmage realizes that this timing is actually perfect for his plans to move forward. He interrupts the conversation, stating that he also has something to say to everyone. With a serious and determined expression, he formally requests to be allowed to skip grades. His mother is shocked by his request, unable to believe her son wants to skip grades at such a young age. He confirms his intentions, explaining that he wants to skip kindergarten and go straight to elementary school. The principal smiles, revealing that she had the same thought and that was the reason she called them in. And she informs him that their thoughts align, and she will treat him as a special early graduate of the kindergarten. He is surprised by how reasonable they are, finding them easy to negotiate with. The principal explains that nurturing the talents of a child prodigy is the duty of an educator, and his mother is overjoyed, exclaiming that her son is a prodigy, but the principal adds a condition. She tells him that a farewell party is also important work, and he must say proper goodbyes to everyone. A few days later, a farewell party is held for him in the star class, with a banner celebrating his departure, and so his classmates gather around him, expressing their sadness that he is leaving and that they won't be able to play together anymore. He apologizes to everyone, a bead of sweat on his face as he feels a bit overwhelmed by their affection. The girls in his class are especially sad to see him go, asking for one last round of pretend play and to exchange contact information. One of the girls stands on her toes, her eagerness to stay in touch with him clear. The reincarnated archmage is a bit taken aback by all the attention, not used to this kind of social interaction, and his new friend, whom he helped, stands among the crowd, his expression a mix of sadness and determination. He calls out to his friend, his voice firm as he declares that he will do his best, inspired by his words. The young archmage smiles, a warm and genuine expression as he sees the positive impact he has had on his new friend. Meanwhile, Zeiss and his friends are sitting on a bench, looking defeated and dejected. The formerly bullied child approaches them, his shadow falling over the three boys as they look up in surprise. Zazen asks what he wants, his voice filled with a mix of annoyance and curiosity. The young boy looks at him, a determined expression on his face as he prepares to speak his mind. He tells Zazen that he is always hitting and kicking him behind the scenes and asks him to stop. Zazen is enraged by the confrontation, but the boy stands his ground, his resolve unshaken. And so he tells them that the kindergarten doesn't discriminate based on wealth and that they are all equal. And so Zazen's friends are surprised by this revelation and they turn to their leader for confirmation. And flustered and embarrassed, Zazen reluctantly agrees, promising that he won't bully him anymore. The young boy smiles, a look of quiet satisfaction on his face as he sees the positive change he has inspired. He walks back to his friend, and the two of them share a look of mutual understanding and respect. He gives a thumbs up, a gesture that conveys his belief that the world is full of potential. The reincarnated archmage echoes the sentiment, knowing that everyone has the capacity to change for the better. And so 6 months later, a large and imposing building with a banner for the Mage Academy Kyo Elementary School comes into view. The young archmage, now dressed in a smart suit, stands before the grand entrance with his parents. He turns to them, a confident and determined look in his eyes as he tells them he is going in. His parents wish him well, encouraging him to relax and do his best on the entrance exam. And so he walks towards the building, thinking that from here on out, he will just do what he has always done. With his parents watching proudly, he walks up the steps of the Grand Academy, ready for the next chapter of his life. Kyo Elementary School is a prestigious institution that provides first-rate magical education for the cultivation of future mages. The academy is world-renowned, having produced elite mages who are active in the Magical Institute. The young archmage knows that his first step towards his goal is to enroll in this prestigious academy. As he stands with his parents, he is watched from a distance by a stern-looking man. The man recognizes him, surprised to see a fallen aristocrat taking the entrance exam for an elite school. He points him out to his son, calling him a stain on their family name and an eyesore. The reincarnated archmage is unaware of the hostile glares, his focus solely on the path ahead. He enters a large lecture hall, filled with other young candidates all vying for a spot in the academy. He sits among them, his expression calm and composed as he waits for the exam to begin. An elderly proctor announces the start of the 2030 entrance exam, addressing the hopeful students. He tells them that the future of the world rests on their shoulders, urging them to become first-rate mages. And the students all respond with a resounding yes, their voices filled with determination and excitement. And so, the proctor places a hand over his heart, adding that their efforts are all under the guidance of the world emperor. And so the young archmage's expression darkens at the mention of the emperor, a flicker of anger in his eyes. He clenches his fists, the name of his treacherous brother echoing in his mind. He thinks of Sophia and his descendants, a look of fierce determination on his face as he vows to confront them. With a confident smirk, he silently challenges his brother's legacy, telling them to wait for him. And so, he walks down the long hallway, a piece of paper in his hand as he prepares for the first part of the exam. He looks at the schedule, which includes a magical aptitude test, an academic test, and a mock battle. He dismisses the challenges as easy, confident in his abilities to pass with flying colors. As he walks, he bumps into another student, a small collision that will soon lead to a new rivalry. The other student, the son of the stern-looking man from before, angrily tells him to watch himself. He towers over the young archmage, a look of disdain on his face as he asserts his dominance. The reincarnated archmage quickly apologizes, knowing that causing a commotion here would not be wise. He also notices that the other boy has many followers, and making an enemy of him could be problematic. The boy scoffs, calling him a little runt and telling him not to think he will pass the exam. He then walks away with his friends, calling him a stain on their family name and leaving him in stunned silence. The first part of the entrance exam is a magical ability assessment, held on a large, open field. The other candidates are all practicing their magic, creating glowing orbs and circles of energy. One of them unleashes a powerful blast of magic that just barely misses a target, showing off his skill. The reincarnated archmage stands to the side, observing the others with a calm and analytical expression. He is a bit surprised by the level of magical ability the other candidates possess. Suddenly the boy from before appears in front of him, a smug and arrogant look on his face. He stands over him, a clear challenge in his eyes as he prepares to show off his own power. He taunts him, calling him a fallen aristocrat and an embarrassment to their family name. The young archmage is taken aback by the insults, the words fallen and family stain echoing in his mind. The other boy continues his verbal assault, mocking his kind and sickly father who keeps getting poorer, and he declares that elites like him deserve to be in this academy and tells him to watch closely. He strikes a powerful stance, gathering his magical energy as he prepares to cast a spell. He summons a fire spirit, a glowing red magic circle forming in front of him as he chants the incantation. He then unleashes a powerful fireball, a massive orb of fire that streaks across the field toward a target. The fireball hits the target with a massive explosion, sending debris flying everywhere. The power gauge on the target maxes out, indicating the incredible force of the attack. The other students and the proctor are all stunned by the display of power, their eyes wide with disbelief. They whisper among themselves, wondering if this is really an elementary school exam and noting its middle school level magic. The boy lets out a smug huff, a look of triumph on his face as he basks in the attention. He turns to the young archmage, telling him to just head home, confident that he has proven his superiority. The reincarnated archmage simply stands there, his expression unreadable as he prepares to take his turn. He activates his own custom abyss magic, a blue aura surrounding him as he uses gravity manipulation. He sends a small, controlled blast of energy towards the target, a stark contrast to the previous explosive display. But his attack also maxes out the power gauge, showing that his refined technique is just as powerful. The gauge even begins to spark and malfunction, unable to handle the sheer force of his concentrated magic. The other students are once again in awe, their faces a mixture of shock and admiration. The target then shatters into pieces, completely destroyed by the young archmage's incredible power. The arrogant boy is left speechless, his eyes wide with disbelief as he realizes he has been completely outmatched. He can only watch in stunned silence as the dust settles, his confidence completely shattered. Suddenly a large disc-shaped object flies towards him, a new and unexpected part of the exam. He panics, letting out a scream as he tries to dodge the incoming projectile. But the young archmage simply raises a hand, his expression calm and focused as he prepares to deal with the new threat. He effortlessly stops the disc in mid-air and then sends it crashing to the ground, creating another massive explosion. The other boy is left sitting on the edge of a newly formed crater, his face pale with fear and shock. He is so terrified that he wets himself, a puddle forming on the ground beneath him as he stares in disbelief. The young archmage stands over him, the sun at his back creating an intimidating silhouette. So with a cold and menacing look, he tells the other boy that he is the one who should be heading home. The bully is left trembling in fear, his arrogant demeanor completely gone as he faces the overwhelming power of the young archmage. In the distance, a group of other students, including a blonde girl with a ponytail, watch the confrontation with interest. The blonde girl observes the scene with a calm and analytical expression, a thoughtful look on her face. The proctor announces that the young archmage has passed the magical ability assessment, his voice echoing across the field. The reincarnated archmage simply turns and walks away, his expression unreadable as he moves on to the next test. He has already passed the magical ability assessment, and now he is ready for the academic aptitude exam and the mock battle. The second part of the entrance exam is the academic test, held in a large and quiet examination hall, and the students are all focused on their papers, the only sound in the room the scratching of pens on paper. The young archmage finds the test to be way too easy, and he decides to answer like a normal child to avoid suspicion. He lets out a quiet sigh, a bit bored by the simplicity of the questions on the exam. A girl sitting next to him whispers that she forgot her eraser, a look of panic on her face. He calmly takes his own eraser and breaks it in half, a simple solution to her problem. He offers her the piece, a small act of kindness that surprises the girl, and he tells her that they should both do their best, a small smile on his face as he encourages her. She thanks him, a blush on her cheeks as she is touched by his unexpected generosity. So from a few rows back, the blonde girl from the magical ability test watches him, her expression thoughtful and curious, and she continues to observe him, her eyes narrowed as she tries to figure out the mystery behind this extraordinary child. After the academic test, it is lunchtime, and the students all gather in the cafeteria to eat, and the young archmage has a lovingly prepared bento box from his mother, filled with his favorite foods. He sits with his parents, who have come to support him during the long exam day. His father asks if he is doing well on the exams, and he confidently replies that he is doing perfectly. He eats his octopus-shaped hot dog, and his parents encourage him to keep up the good work in the afternoon. Suddenly, the stern-looking man from before, along with his son, approaches their table. The young archmage's father looks up, a bit surprised to see them, as he continues to eat his lunch, and the man greets him by name, commenting on the coincidence of running into him there. The father returns the greeting, but his tone is cold and distant, which seems to annoy the other man. The man questions his tone, reminding him of his lower position in their Zaibatsu hierarchy. The father tries to de-escalate the situation, a bead of sweat on his face as he asks him not to be so cold. The man's hand glows with a faint magical energy, a clear threat that does not go unnoticed. The young archmage's mother looks on with a worried expression, sensing the tension between the two men. The reincarnated archmage watches the exchange in silence, his eyes narrowed as he assesses the situation. The man then turns his attention to the young boy, asking if he inherited his father's defiant attitude. His son, who was humbled during the magical ability test, watches with a smug look on his face. The father is at a loss for words, unsure how to respond to the blatant disrespect. The man then yells at him not to make excuses, accusing him of getting cocky for skipping grades. He calls him a fallen aristocrat and then angrily knocks his bento box out of his hands. And the family and the other students in the cafeteria are all stunned by his sudden and violent outburst. The lovingly prepared shared lunch is now scattered all over the floor, a mess of rice, eggs, and vegetables. The man then threatens the father, telling him to avoid being brought before the Zaibatsu Council on charges of disrespect. He pours his hot coffee all over the spilled food and orders the father to clean the floor and eat everything as an apology. The young archmage tries to intervene, telling his father that it's enough, but his father holds him back. The father bows deeply, apologizing for his son's behavior and asking for the man to let it slide. He explains that if they cause a commotion, his son could be disqualified from the exam, and he begs for mercy. The reincarnated archmage watches his father endure this humiliation for his sake, a look of pain and anger in his eyes. He reflects on his past life, realizing that he acted recklessly back then, and it wasn't the right strategy. He knows he needs to learn from this lesson, remembering he was assassinated in his past life for neglecting this same principle. As the food from the bento box falls to the floor, he decides that he will not make the same mistake again. With a look of intense focus, he activates his magic, and the spilled food and coffee begin to reverse their fall. The hot coffee splashes back into the man's face, causing him to cry out in pain and surprise. He stumbles back, clutching his face and yelling about the hot coffee, his son rushing to his side. He glares at the young archmage's family, vowing that they will remember this humiliation. He and his son then run off, the man desperately searching for water to cool his burns. The father is left in stunned silence, his mind struggling to process the sudden and bizarre turn of events. The young archmage then calls out to his father, a calm and reassuring smile on his face. He suggests they move somewhere else to eat their lunch, and his father looks at him in confusion. And suddenly, the bento boxes are back on the table, perfectly restored and filled with the delicious food from before. And so the young boy dismisses his father's questions, saying he wants to eat while looking at the sky in the courtyard. The parents watch in stunned silence, their minds still reeling from the sudden turn of events and their son's hidden power. And the final part of the entrance exam is a mock battle, held in a massive coliseum filled with cheering spectators. And so, the crowd is filled with the parents and families of the candidates, all eagerly watching the young mages compete. The young archmage is called to the arena, his small figure standing alone in the vast entrance tunnel. He takes a deep breath, a look of calm determination on his face as he prepares for the final challenge. He walks out into the arena, his footsteps echoing in the massive space as he heads to the center. He looks around at the cheering crowd, a bit surprised by the scale of the event. So his opponent is announced as Karasumaru Yamabuki, the same boy who had taunted him earlier. The reincarnated archmage is not surprised, a small, knowing smile on his face as he finds the matchup interesting. And his parents watch from the stands, their faces filled with worry as they see their son's opponent. The boy explains that his father bribed the original opponent and rigged the mock battle to make him kneel. And he cracks his knuckles, a confident and arrogant look on his face as he prepares to fight. And so he thinks that with this mock battle, he can beat the other boy without any worries, confident in his rigged victory. And the young archmage agrees to the fight, a sinister smile on his face as he says it's time to get started. He then taunts his opponent, calling him the wedding, yourself jerk, from the previous encounter. The boy is enraged by the insult, his face turning red as he yells that he will kill him. He declares that he will pound the cheating fool, with his own cheating, a look of pure hatred in his eyes. He reveals a magical bracelet that his father gave him, a powerful item that will give him an unfair advantage. The bracelet is a powerful magic tool that increases the wearer's magical power by 10 times. The young archmage simply smirks, his confidence unshaken as he prepares to face his overconfident and cheating opponent. The magical bracelet is an A-rank artifact worth 250 million yen, a rare item that draws only from high-level monsters, and he is confident that the examiners, having been bought off, will turn a blind eye to his use of the powerful item. The bracelet glows with an intense light as he activates its power, a surge of magical energy flowing through him. He summons the fire spirit salamander again, its power now amplified by the magical artifact. He unleashes a massive fire bird, a torrent of flames that engulfs the entire arena. He glares at his opponent, confident that he is toast against such an overwhelming attack. The crowd is in an uproar, stunned by the unbelievable power that is at the level of a university student. The boy's father watches from the stands with a smug and satisfied smile, pleased by his son's display of power. The massive fire bird rushes towards the young archmage, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. The boy gloats, asking how his opponent likes his amplified power, certain that he has won. The arena is filled with a thick cloud of smoke and dust, obscuring the view of the aftermath. But as the smoke begins to clear, a pair of glowing pink eyes can be seen, completely unharmed by the attack. The reincarnated archmage stands in the center of the arena, surrounded by a swirling aura of pink and blue energy. The other boy is in disbelief, unable to comprehend how his attack, now 100 times greater, could have failed. He watches in horror as the young archmage summons his own fire bird, a massive and powerful creature of flames. The young boy simply raises a hand, his expression calm and confident as he prepares to end the fight. He unleashes his Moos phenomenon reversal magic, sending a powerful blast blast of energy towards his opponent. The boy's fire bird is completely dissipated, and he is left to face the full force of the counterattack. He can only watch in terror as the powerful blast of magic turns his own attack into a harmless firework, and his parents, who are so confident in their rigged victory, are left speechless by the unbelievable turn of events. The boy is terrified, letting out a scream as he scrambles away from the powerful giant. He tries to defend himself, summoning a fire spell to keep the giant at bay. The arena is filled with explosions as the two magical beings clash in a spectacular battle. The announcer, who is also the boy's father, is caught in the crossfire and cries out in pain as he is hit by the heat, and the young archmage walks through the flames, his body surrounded by a protective aura of magical energy. He looks up at his opponent, a look of calm determination on his face as he prepares to end the fight. The boy is left speechless, his face a mixture of fear and disbelief as he stares at the unharmed child. And so the reincarnated archmage explains that he could have ended this with a complete reflection on the first strike. He points out that his opponent's magic power has increased significantly, and asks if he cheated somehow. The boy vehemently denies cheating, but his nervous expression gives him away. The young archmage then reaches out and touches the magical bracelet, his eyes glowing with power. He activates his Membius phenomenon reversal magic, a surge of energy flowing from his hand into the artifact. The magical bracelet shatters into pieces, its power completely nullified by the young archmage's superior magic. He tells the boy that his cheating ends here and asks if he is ready to face him on equal terms. He clenches his fist, a powerful aura of pink and blue energy surrounding him as he prepares for the final blow. The boy collapses to the ground, his body trembling with fear as he faces the overwhelming power of the young archmage. The reincarnated archmage unleashes a powerful blast of energy, his eyes glowing with an intense light. The boy can only watch in terror, his face a mask of fear as he braces for the impact. He lets out a final desperate scream, his voice filled with a mix of defiance and terror. But the young archmage's attack is not what he expects, and the fight comes to a sudden and unexpected end. The defeated boy is left trembling on the ground, his face a mask of pure terror, and the young archmage's father is stunned by the display, his mind still trying to process his son's incredible power. The boy's father calls out to him, but the young archmage's father intervenes, telling him the match is already decided. He looks at his son and tells him to stop, and the young archmage reluctantly agrees. He turns and walks away, leaving his defeated opponent sitting in the crater he created. And so he then approaches his father and the announcer, who are both still in a state of shock. The announcer, who is also the boy's father, is at a loss for words, unable to comprehend what he just witnessed. And so he finally finds his voice and declares that Kurasumaru has lost his will to fight, making the young archmage the winner. And the crowd erupts in cheers as the young boy is declared the victor of the mock battle. He walks out of the arena, his fist raised in a quiet victory as confetti rains down on him. His parents greet him with proud smiles, their faces filled with a mix of awe and admiration. He walks away from the arena, his victory secured and his place in the academy now guaranteed. As he walks, he senses someone approaching him from behind and turns to see who it is. The blonde girl from before is leaning against a wall, her arms crossed as she waits for him, and she approaches him, a curious and slightly challenging look in her eyes as she asks for a word with him, and she congratulates him on his victory, telling him that he did very well in the mock battle. She then asks if he is the one who skipped grades, her tone a mix of curiosity and skepticism, and he is a bit taken aback by her overly familiar and direct approach, wondering who this girl is. He confirms that he is, and she continues to question him, her interest clearly piqued, but as he speaks, his vision starts to get blurry, and he feels a wave of dizziness wash over him. The blonde girl asks if he is listening, her voice filled with a mix of annoyance and concern as he sways on his feet. He suddenly collapses, falling forward and grabbing on her for support, much to her surprise. She is shocked to find him asleep, his head resting on her shoulder as he snores softly. A short while later, he wakes up with a start, his mind still a bit groggy from his sudden nap, and he finds himself in a comfortable room, with his parents sitting on a couch and looking at him with relieved smiles. He greets them, a bit confused as he asks where he is, not recognizing the unfamiliar surroundings. The elderly proctor from the exam is also there, and he explains that they are in the principal's office for the final interview. He tells the young boy that it is only natural to be exhausted after such a battle and that he slept well. And so, his father explains that they were worried when he didn't come back to the observation area after the fight. The young archmage apologizes to his father, a bead of sweat on his face as he feels a bit embarrassed. The principal nods, a calm and reassuring expression on his face as he prepares to begin the interview. He tells them that now that the young boy is awake, they can begin the final interview. The reincarnated archmage sits up straight, his expression serious as he prepares for the last part of the exam. The principal then reveals that he has already passed, a statement that surprises the young boy. He explains that in the long history of the school's entrance exams, he has never seen such incredible results, and so with a warm and welcoming smile, he declares that they nurture mages that lead the world and welcomes him to the school. The young archmage is overjoyed, thanking him and saying he looks forward to working with him. His parents are overcome with emotion, their faces filled with a mix of pride, joy, and disbelief. The principal watches him, a thoughtful and intrigued look in his eyes as he senses his exceptional talent. He is curious to see what kind of school life this extraordinary boy will lead, his expectations high for the new student. The opening ceremony for Key Elementary School begins, the grand building a symbol of the elite world he is now a part of, and so the young archmage walks among the other students, his new uniform setting him apart from the crowd. He looks around at his new classmates, a mix of curiosity and determination in his eyes. From the crowd of parents, his mother and father wave at him, their faces filled with pride and joy. He gives them a small, confident smile, a silent promise that he will succeed in this new environment. As he walks, his eyes are drawn to a familiar pair of shoes, a hint of recognition in his gaze. He looks up and sees the blonde girl from the entrance exam, her expression as serious and intense as ever. She stands with her arms crossed, a look of challenge in her eyes as she stares directly at him. She asks if he has anything to say to her, her tone a mix of annoyance and expectation, and he is a bit taken aback by her directness and asks who she is, having forgotten her from their brief encounter. The girl is enraged by his forgetfulness, letting out a frustrated scream as she can't believe he doesn't remember her. A memory of him collapsing and grabbing onto her for support flashes in his mind, but he still doesn't recall her name. He asks what she is talking about, his confusion only adding to her frustration, and she calls him a clueless little one, unable to believe he doesn't even remember their first meeting. And she tells him that he confuses her, her words a mix of frustration and a strange kind of admiration. But then, with a sudden change in tone, she declares that he is precisely suited to be her partner. She recounts his actions during the exam, from bending the gong with magic to showing mercy to his cheating opponent. He is surprised that she was watching him so closely, a look of mild shock on his face. She tells him that he possesses magical ability, intellect, and the noble spirit of an aristocrat, and so with a confident and dramatic pose, she declares that he is suited to be her knight, a proposal that leaves him completely stunned. He is at a loss for words, a bead of sweat on his face as he tries to process her proposal. He bluntly asks if she is a stalker, a question that enrages the blonde girl, and the scene then shifts back to the opening ceremony in the grand lecture hall. The principal is giving a speech, telling the students to study hard and guide the world toward peace. The students listen intently, their faces filled with a mix of excitement and determination. The principal then announces that it is time for the student representative's greeting. The young archmage stands up, ready to take his place at the podium as the valedictorian. The other students whisper among themselves, surprised that the valedictorian is a grade skipper who fell asleep after the mock battle. The blonde girl counts down from 7, a look of anticipation on her face as she waits for his speech. The young archmage stands at the podium, a bit nervous as he prepares to address the entire school. He clears his throat, his small voice echoing in the large hall as he begins his speech. He pledges to dedicate himself to his studies, and become a mage who will bring peace to the world. The other students are moved by his words, their faces filled with a mix of awe and inspiration. But then, he adds a bold declaration, addressing all the students in the hall. He challenges anyone who thinks they are the strongest in the school to come after him after school, and so the blonde girl is stunned by his audacity, her eyes wide with a mix of shock and amusement, and so he then issues a direct challenge, telling them to fight him with no holding back. The other students are in an uproar, completely baffled by his unexpected and aggressive declaration. The principal, however, simply watches with a small, knowing smile, intrigued by his boldness. The young archmage is determined not to waste his time fooling around, seeing this as the fastest way to prove he is number one. After school, the young archmage and the blonde girl walk out of the Grand Academy building together. She asks if he is sure about his challenge, a hint of concern in her voice. He confirms that he is, explaining that he wants to take shortcuts and this is the fastest way. She is confused by his answer, but before she can ask what he means, he senses an attack. He quickly pushes her out of the way and summons a magical shield just in time to block a powerful blast of energy. The blonde girl is shocked by the sudden attack, her heart pounding as she tries to process what just happened. The young archmage stands protectively in front of her, his magical shield still active as he faces their attackers. A group of older students, their faces filled with arrogance and hostility, stand before them. He smiles, a look of satisfaction on his face as he is glad that someone actually came to challenge him. The leader of the group compliments his block, a smug and condescending tone in his voice, and so he then declares that he has come to knock him down, his eyes fill with a look of pure aggression. He tells the young boy that the upper grade students will teach in the school's customs, a clear threat of violence. The reincarnated archmage simply smirks, a look of amusement on his face as he is not at all intimidated, and he is pleased that his declaration reached so far and that he now has a chance to prove his strength. The two groups face each other in the schoolyard, the tension in the air, so thick you could cut it with a knife. The leader of the upperclassmen glares at him, his eyes filled with a mix of arrogance and contempt. The young archmage meets his gaze, his expression calm and composed as he prepares for the fight. The blonde girl watches from the side, a look of worry and concern on her face as she clenches her fists. The upperclassman taunts him, calling him a small runt and saying he will teach him Kia's customs. The young archmage simply smiles, telling him that would be helpful, his confidence unshaken. Just as the fight is about to begin, the young archmage looks up at a nearby clock, a look of realization on his face. He exclaims that it is already dinner time, a statement that confuses his opponents. The upperclassmen are baffled by his sudden change in demeanor, urging him to fight. He explains that his family has a rule to eat dinner together and that his parents will get angry if he is late. The leader of the group is enraged, thinking he is being made fun of, and vows to crush him. The three upperclassmen all unleash their magic at once, sending a barrage of powerful attacks toward him, but the reincarnated archmage simply raises a hand, a calm and confident expression on his face. He activates his Mobius phenomenon reversal magic, creating a swirling vortex of energy that traps their attacks. The colorful blasts of magic are caught in the vortex, their power completely nullified by his superior spell. The leader of the group is in disbelief, shouting that his magic is being swallowed up by the strange vortex. And so the young archmage stands in the center of the swirling energy, completely unharmed and in control. He then unleashes the trapped energy, sending it back towards the stunned upperclassmen. The vortex of magic rushes towards them, a torrent of power that they are completely unprepared for, and they can only watch in terror, their faces a mixture of shock and disbelief as their own attacks are turned against them. The energy blast hits them with full force, sending them flying back and crashing to the ground. A massive explosion rocks the schoolyard, the force of the attack leaving a trail of destruction, and the three upperclassmen are left sitting on the ground, dazed and confused by the sudden and overwhelming counterattack. The young archmage then tells them to get up and come at him for real this time, his voice filled with a mix of challenge and confidence. The three veterans are lying on the ground after the powerful counterattack, surrounded by smoke and debris in the schoolyard. They look at the boy with a mixture of shock and disbelief, unable to understand how they were defeated so easily. The blonde girl watches everything, confused, and wonders how he activates his magic without needing to summon spirits or demons. But the group leader stands up furiously, shouting that he absolutely will not lose to that rookie under any circumstances. And then he summons the powerful lightning spirit Haukar and prepares to unleash his crackling blade with full force. A massive flash of lightning called Thunderbolt hurtles toward the protagonist at incredible speed. Electrical energy crackles in the air, demonstrating the destructive power and intensity of the veteran's attack. At this point the scene changes to an older man viewing the profile of a student with a deviation score of only 32. The protagonist looks at the man with a curious expression as he analyzes the results of the magic test. The professor points at him and shouts that the measuring device is prestigious and wouldn't fail by calling him a fail. And so with an irritated expression, the young man realizes that the teacher is trying to set him up somehow. In this case, he decides to place his hand on the measuring device, which begins to glow with an intense blue light. He declares that he won't hold back either and unleashes a wave of magical power that instantly fills the entire room. The professor is completely shocked by the sudden burst of power and shouts, asking what just happened. The other two students in the room scream in pain, covering their ears because of the immense magical pressure being released. Meanwhile, the boy stands calmly amidst the energy as the device shatters into several pieces. The professor shouts in disbelief, saying that that monolith could measure magical power with a score above 380. He then stares at the pieces of the precious magical device scattered on the table, completely stunned by the situation. With a small smile, the protagonist simply says that he's leaving and prepares to go away, and so he turns and walks away, leaving the teacher and the other students behind with the equipment completely destroyed. Back in the classroom, the protagonist is sitting with a serious expression on his face. The blonde girl then grabs him by the wrist and asks if he was the one who broke the meter. At that moment, the scene returns to the fight where he raises his hand to stop the lightning strike coming towards him. The veteran is completely shocked to see his powerful lightning attack stopped in midair. He shouts in disbelief, realizing that the rookie managed to create a defensive barrier in time. The protagonist is enveloped by a blue energy barrier that easily deflects the electric attack. With a determined look, the opponent tries to maintain their attack while thinking they are on the defensive, but suddenly the young man appears right in front of him, taking the veteran completely by surprise. He then touches his opponent and activates his magic called Mobius Reversal. The blonde girl watches from afar as the protagonist prepares to use his opponent's magical power. The scene returns to the room where the boy pretends not to understand, saying he doesn't know what she's talking about, and she says it doesn't matter, but now he has become the lowest ranked student in the school. But with a confident smile, he replies that he'll figure it out somehow without worrying. A notice board shows that students' scores have been rechecked using backup devices. Then a teacher explains that the bracelets distributed to all students have an official name. The device will monitor and evaluate your magical actions and fluctuations 365 days a year. The teacher shouts that the overall evaluation ranking will determine everyone's hierarchy in the school. The scene cuts back to the fight, and the veteran's attack is reversed, returning directly to him with full force. He is struck squarely by his own lightning magic, with no way to defend himself from the surprise attack. The veteran's eyes turn white, indicating that he was defeated by the counterattack. The veteran named Karuno falls defeated to the ground while his friends scream his name in utter despair. Meanwhile, the protagonist explains that he kept the reflection of power a minimum so as not to seriously injure his opponent. He then tells the others that their colleague will only have numbness that will pass quickly, leaving them both relieved. With a smile, the boy thanks them for the fight and says he hopes to work with them in the future, calling them senpais. Later that evening, the young man has dinner with his parents at home while a maid serves the food to the family. His parents then ask him how his first day of school went and if he is enjoying his new school routine. The boy replies that yes, and that he thinks he can get along with everyone at the new school without any problems, and his parents are pleased with the answer and encourage him to continue studying hard in order to succeed in his studies. And at that moment, the young man calls his father's attention to ask something important about the school system. He asks if the elementary school has a system for skipping grades, like he saw on the registration pamphlet. The parents are surprised, imagining that he wants to skip a grade again, and the scene changes to the classroom. The protagonist thinks his deviation score is 232 and that he has no choice but to climb again, and so then the teacher tells all the students to go to the courtyard for the class's physical fitness test. The boy is a little worried by the news since physical tests are definitely not his strong suit. All the students gather in the large school courtyard, preparing to begin the physical fitness tests. Soon after, the protagonist is already panting and bent over with exhaustion, showing his complete lack of physical fitness. The blonde girl approaches and asks if he's okay, reminding him that he also came in last in the race. He replies that there are several problems, and she notices with a smile that he also has his own weaknesses. He thinks he can't push this body too hard yet and remembers that the original Asuka's father was a sick person, and so from this, he concludes that the boy's weak constitution may have been inherited from his father. The blonde girl then asks how he can be her partner with that weakness, and he is confused, not understanding anything. She gets annoyed that he doesn't remember and reminds him of her proposal for him to become her knight. At this point, the protagonist finally begins to remember their previous encounter and her crazy proposal. She asks him what his answer is, but then says with a confident look that she already knows what he's going to say. The boy is still confused and asks what she means because he doesn't understand his classmate's attitude. The scene cuts back to dinner and the boy's father asks if the reason for all this might be because of a girl named Alice, and the young man confirms that he will do his best because life is short and it's worth facing all the challenges. His father becomes extremely excited and shouts to the maid to prepare red rice to celebrate his son's decision. His mother, Alice, comments with a smile that once he makes up his mind, he won't change it for anything. He thinks to himself that primary school is too low a level for him and that he will graduate quickly. The next day we see the grand and imposing academy where elite students study and hone their skills, and so in the classroom, the other students whisper about the rumor that the newcomer defeated all the veterans the day before. They also commented that the teachers are apparently reporting the incident to the school administration. Ignoring the rumors, the protagonist turns to the blonde girl and finally asks her what her name is, and she gets nervous and replies that it's Arisu, but quickly gets annoyed that he doesn't know and calls him a dense idiot. And so then she formally introduces herself as Lisette and demands that he engrave her name in his heart forever. The girl says that she is the elegant and beautiful girl he will be serving, leaving the young man with a bored expression. Lisette then demands an immediate answer to her proposal to make him her personal knight, but the boy seems distracted by something else and doesn't answer, leaving his classmate even more irritated. And he is looking at a system screen with a list of missions while she wonders what it is. And so Lisette explains that they need to complete missions as a team, while a colleague worries that the group will become a target because of it. And so, the scene then changes to the classroom where all the students are gathered for their first real day of school. The teacher asks everyone to sit down and announces that regular classes for first-year students will begin today. He explains that the school has a rigorous curriculum designed to train the best magicians of the generation. With a serious look, the master warns that from now on, all their conduct will be constantly monitored. Assessments will include daily classes, magical research, and even the perilous exploration of dungeons. A student repeats the part of the conduct at school, showing that everyone is nervous about the constant surveillance. Furthermore, the professor says there will be regular written tests, practical magic exams, and magic duels. He concludes by saying that all these factors will determine each individual's classification and deviation score. Hearing all this, the protagonist becomes thoughtful, analyzing the academy's evaluation system. Meanwhile, Lisette stares at him with a serious expression, silently waiting for some reaction from him. Then the teacher announces that to begin, they will conduct a basic skills assessment with everyone. He instructs the students to put on the bracelets and pass their hand over the magic device at the front of the room. A group of female students nervously stare at the device, preparing for their first official test of the year. A student places her hand over the glowing magic circle, which activates the power measuring device. The device projects a screen that displays the academic record with magical attributes such as the student's levels and abilities. The blue holographic screen shines brightly, displaying the details of the student's power for the evaluation. After the measurement, the girl seems relieved or tired, showing that the process consumes some energy. The teacher then calls the next student, Asuka, and the protagonist confirms that it is his turn to be evaluated. And so, he thinks to himself that he can't unleash his full power there because it would cause problems for everyone. The protagonist looks at the mission board and is surprised to see that there are even field missions. He realizes that the numbers next to them are credits and that completing them will increase their deviation score. With that, all the students look at the holographic notice board, deciding what to do next. The other students begin to form teams, excited to complete the missions and give their best. But the protagonist and Lizette are left alone in the courtyard because no one approaches them to form a team. And so, Lizette complains that everyone seems afraid to approach them because they probably look like troubled children. Then she crosses her arms and asks the boy which of the available missions he will choose to do. The young man looks up, analyzing the long list of missions on the holographic notice board. After thinking for a moment, he raises his finger and points to the mission he has chosen. The scene then returns to the evaluation room where the teacher calls Asuka and says he heard about the commotion. He yells that the newcomer needs to learn a lesson or the school's reputation will suffer because of him. Back to the test. The boy stands in front of the device, but suddenly something on the screen surprises him.